Okay, so what if the true measure of your creativity had nothing to do with an audience? We're about to dive into a framework for exactly that. It's called the Dialogic Engine, and it's basically a manual for what's known as sovereign creation, a pretty provocative guide to making something truly authentic, totally free from the need for anyone else's approval.
So let's start with the central question this whole idea is built around. Just really think about this for a second. 10 years of your life poured into a single work with everything you've got for an audience of just 3 people? Would you still do it? This question, it just cuts right to the heart of why we create. Is it for the likes, the validation, or is it for something deeper, for some internal truth? And this is the manual itself. Its central premise is, well, it's incredibly bold. This isn't about finding a bigger audience or gaming an algorithm. It's about a fundamental shift in your entire mindset. We're talking about transforming that deep need for approval into what it calls an emotional declaration of independence. A powerful idea, right?
And that brings us right to this core concept, sovereign creation. So what does it actually mean? It means you're creating from this place of like an uncompromising commitment to your own internal truth. The goal is to get to a point where external approval, good or bad, just becomes irrelevant. It doesn't even factor into the equation. The act of creating is the whole point.
So how do you actually do this? Well, the manual gives us this central metaphor of an engine, the dialogic engine. And, like any engine, it needs fuel. But the type of fuel this thing runs on, well, it's probably not what you're thinking.
Now check out this diagram of the engine itself. This is what's so interesting. Look at what it takes in as fuel. Chaos, the fire hose of the external world, and something called inner weather. These are not calm, orderly inputs, right? This engine is designed to take in all the messy, difficult, chaotic parts of life and actually metabolize them into what it calls aligned action. And this slide just lays it out so perfectly. You've got 2 kinds of fuel. The low-grade stuff is what we all chase, right? External validation, keeping everyone happy, worrying about what other people think. The engine can kind of sputter along on that. But the high-grade fuel, the stuff that really powers sovereign creation, that's all the hard stuff. Your internal emotional storms, that feeling of cognitive dissonance, the contradictions in your own life that you just can't shake.
Which brings us to this key idea, necessary friction. We usually think of friction as a bad thing, something that wears an engine down. But in this model, it's actually the essential element. It's the thing that refines your raw experience into useful insight, what the manual calls didicles. The engine isn't grinding to a halt, it's using that tension to create something new, something valuable. Okay, so we've got the engine and its very unusual fuel source. Now let's talk about a critical piece of its architecture, this protective filter called the sovereign wall. So here it is, the sovereign wall. And you can see it's this smart, dynamic barrier. Its job isn't just to block stuff out. It's to filter out the pollutants, things like social appeasement or other people's opinions, while at the same time defining the boundary between your true sovereign self and the chaos of the world outside. I absolutely love this quote from a part of the manual called the grinding stone of truth. It says, "The sovereign wall does not break. It metabolizes." This is so key. It's not some brittle defense that's going to shatter the first time it comes up against a hard truth. No, its function is to pull that truth in, process it, and use it to become even stronger. So how does the wall actually do that? Well, it runs on the skill the manual calls cognitive honesty, and it really is a discipline. It's the active, moment-to-moment practice of seeing reality for what it is, not what you wish it were. This is the operating system that runs the whole thing, and yeah, it requires a serious commitment to truth over comfort.
In the real world, a lot of the time, this just looks like refusing what's called social appeasement. And you know exactly what this is. It's that automatic yes, that forced smile, that fake gratitude you perform just to keep things smooth and avoid an awkward moment, even when it feels like a little betrayal of yourself.
The manual gives this fantastic, totally relatable story to illustrate this. It's called The Forced Gift. Picture this. Someone shows up with a casserole you absolutely do not want. The old script, the old protocol, is to just take it and pretend you're grateful. But the new choice, powered by that sovereign wall, is to politely but firmly refuse. And yeah, the immediate result is probably some discomfort. But the long-term result? You reclaim your own space. You reclaim your sovereignty. The air in your lungs is yours again.
All right, so the wall protects your integrity. But how do you actually make big, fundamental changes in your life? Well, the manual says you can't just tweak things around the edges. You have to take what it calls a liminal leap.
So here's the setup. You can make tiny little adjustments to your life from a place of safety and stability. And that's fine for small stuff. But if you want a real, genuine transformation, you have to be willing to leap out of that stability and intentionally embrace a period of chaos and not knowing.
And that is the liminal leap. The key here is that this doesn't just happen to you, it's a conscious, deliberate choice. It's a decision to abandon what's known, what's comfortable, and to intentionally step into instability. It's definitely a high-risk move, but it's a move you make in pursuit of a much more authentic way of being. And where do you land after that leap? Well, not in an empty void. You land in what's called the liminal space. This is described as this environment of pure dynamic potential. It's that in-between state. You've let go of the old you, but the new you hasn't fully formed yet. It's scary for sure, but it's also the place where anything is possible. Which brings us to the final, and maybe the most radical, idea in this whole manual. What is the ultimate goal of all this work? What's the final output of the engine? It's not about creating some perfect, problem-free life. It's something else entirely. The ultimate achievement for a sovereign creator is not to solve all of life's contradictions. It's to learn how to live inside them. It's about stopping the fight against the tension and the paradoxes, and instead, learning how to make a home right there in the middle of it all. And this quote just nails why that's so important. It's in those messy areas, the gaps in what you know, the ambiguities, the contradictions. That's where the really interesting stuff starts to happen. That's where you find brand new patterns, where you start asking better questions, and where more honest maps of reality start to emerge. So we'll end with this question, which really just wraps up the entire philosophy of the Dialogic Engine. What if the point isn't to find all the answers and smooth everything out? What if the real work, the true sovereign work, is to get comfortable with the tension and to build a strong, honest, and creative life right in the very heart of the paradox? It's definitely something to think about.